We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Hey guys! Since the series reached the latest chapters, we have a new one today. This is What If Naruto Was the Red Demon. The Red Demon left with the mist, as fast as light and as silent as a ghost. To most, he is known as the fastest man alive. To others, he was the silent twin. His red stare was able to paralyze any man it gazed on, but his devotion to his family was almost overwhelming. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 1. He didn't know what his father expected from him. This was the thought of Namikaze Naruto as he fell on his knees after a knee was smashed into his stomach, courtesy of his twin sister. Bright yellow lights popped and blinked around him and tears clouded his vision as he grabbed his stomach and gasped for air. His head hit the ground when a savage spinning heel kick connected to his cheek. The lights fell around him, popping quietly and finally stopped showering down as the opponent stopped attacking. Enough. He could vaguely hear his father say, and a pair of booted sandals entered his line of sight. Get up. Minato commanded and frowned sharply when Naruto struggled off his knees, shakily rising to his feet. Why are you not attacking? Naruto looked down to the ground, his left arm supporting his stomach and his face in a controlled, neutral expression as he panted a little for air. I can't hit her, she's my sister. The tall blonde man stayed silent for a minute and Naruto didn't speak. He looked down on his red-haired son, who was wearing a black short-sleeved shirt and short black pants, white sandals and bandages wrapped around his fists. A kunai and shuriken pouch were perched safely on his left thigh and right waist respectively. While his older twin sister wore a white short-sleeved shirt and white shorts with black sandals, there were white bandages wrapped around her neck and shoulders. Her weapon pouches were in the same places as his. The blonde 9-year-old girl looked at her brother's face with concern and turned her purple eyes down when he glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. The red bruise that was growing on his cheek intimidated her. She didn't think her kick would cause that. Her brother had been dodging her attacks and she had followed after because she knew his fighting style since she too was using it, but he probably decided that it was too boring dodging, so he allowed those 2 hits to connect. Minato's blue eyes flickered to her, then back to her brother, and he said, she doesn't have any problems hitting you. Your academy teachers say that you are a prodigy, so much so that they recommend you graduate 3 early. Where is this skill they speak so highly about? Where is it? He shouted, but Naruto remained unshaken by it. Rather, he looked at him with fiery purple eyes and said, defiant, I will not hit my sister. Minato scowled and stared down his son. Relenting soon after, he finally turned to his blonde daughter and asked, why would you hit him if he refuses to hit you back? The girl shook a little under his eyes and said, brother said it was fine. Is that so? The Hokage mused as he turned around and scratched his cheek. The 3 Namikaze clan members were training in the special training ground in their home's backyard. There was enough space for a small river, luscious grass and clean air. It would have been a great place for a picnic if the older man had not designated the place to be used for training. His thoughts wandered on his children. Rin Namikaze was a mirror image of his late wife, Kushina Uzumaki, but she lacked the patented Uzumaki attitude, which was compensated by her brains and skills. She had also been recommended to graduate early by her teachers when they found out that they couldn't teach her anything new. He just wanted to evaluate them on whether or not they were truly ready to enter into the shinobi world. Naruto Namikaze also looked like Kushina, but he lacked both of their attitudes. He was more of a plain-faced child, colorless and merging into the background. Minato was aware of the reason for this, watching his mother die protecting their now 5-year-old baby sister. Naruto used to be so bright and happy, now he moved around with shadows in his eyes and an empty expression. He could barely keep a handle on him anymore, seeing as he wasn't always at home. The only reason he was able to know about what was going on with him was through Rin, but even the girl was barely ever away from Naruto's side. Minato regretted the day he allowed the 2 kids to wait outside Kushina's hospital room. It had been Naruto that had watched the light leave Kushina's eyes with her head lying on her husband's lap. His sister had been knocked out by a shockwave when the Kyuubi smashed a tail near them. The yondaime wasn't aware that Naruto blamed his inability to think quickly, forcing his mother, who literally leapt off the hospital bed after giving birth to young Mikoto minutes before, to take them to safety. After this, she ran back with her dual katana to fend off the tailed beast long enough for them to seal it into Mikoto and her, before dying with half of Kyubi's chakra. He and his sister had followed her and watched the devastating fight between an Uzumaki and a tailed beast, ending with the Sandane pushing the Yondaime away from the Death Reaper seal matrix and sacrificing his own life to seal half of the beast into Kushina and the other half into Mikoto. Years later and Naruto still wasn't past her death. Her death changed Minato too. He got more ruthless and his tolerance thinned, especially when he was faced with inadequacies with his ninja force. He turned back to his children and watched as Rin worriedly placed her hands on her brother's cheeks. The boy shook his head a little and there was a small, barely even visible upward twitch of his lips, but she caught it. She beamed back widely and he rolled his eyes. Minato suspected that they had some sort of wordless communication. Now that he looked at them, they looked like physical manifestations of light and darkness. One couldn't live without the other and both balanced each other out. Rin was bright and friendly. No one could keep a grudge with her because she was just too nice. Naruto was seldom ever seen and he resonated empty nothingness if he was seen, thankfully not the evil kind. He suspected that Naruto was better than Rin when it came to combat and knowledge, but he wanted to see it for himself if the boy ever really wanted to graduate early. That was when he made his decision. Tiger. He called and looked to his right when a tiger-masked ANBU operative flickered to his side. Summon Fugaku immediately. Tell him to come with Itachi. Yes sir. And he was gone in a well-executed body flicker jutsu. His children had now forgotten about his presence, as Rin was now chattering into Naruto's ear about something only they would understand while the boy's eyebrows were partially raised as he listened. His hands were in his pockets and he leaned back a little when the girl flapped her hands as she described something to him. Irika-sensei called it a tree warthog, but it looked more like an Iwagakure pig. She waited for him to speak. Why do you think that? Well, you see, a tree hog is green and an Iwa pig is brown with a short horn on its forehead, just like the one he pointed at. She was talking about a time in class that Irika had shown them a picture of a tree hog but she had objected and called it an Iwa pig. Naruto could remember the day very well. She was seated beside him and had to hold her back from lunging at the academy teacher. Naruto was about to speak but a cough interrupted them. He looked to the side at the person and remained neutral when he saw that it was his academy rival, Itachi Uchiha. Both stoic boys narrowed their stares, before they looked at their fathers, who nodded to each other in respect. Minato spoke first. Since you don't want to fight your sister, then you will fight your cousin. Will that be a problem? Itachi was in a long-sleeved black shirt and white shorts with white bandages also wrapped around his fist, like Naruto. No. Both prodigies unanimously replied. Both fathers smirked. They could taste the tension in the air as both cool boys glared at each other. The wind picked up around them as this happened. Minato dragged Rin away, who was openly glaring at her Uchiha cousin with bared teeth. Get into your stances. The 9-year-old boys lowered into their respective fighting stances. Itachi in the Uchiha Taijutsu stance and Naruto in the Hummingbird Taijutsu stance. No holding back. Minato declared. Don't plan to. They muttered to themselves and their eyes twisted, forming 3 Tomo Sharingan. Fugaku tried to suppress his surprise. It wasn't their first time witnessing Naruto's Sharingan. He knew that the Namikaze clan, a clan that was almost extinct, were an offshoot of Indra Otsutsuki's second son. They weren't able to unlock their Sharingan since the genes were extremely recessive. In return for not inheriting their forefathers' Jujutsu, they were gifted with unnatural bloodline speed and shared a high affinity for ninjutsu along with their Uchiha cousins. The reason the Namikaze were reduced to solely the Hokage's family was because the chances of reproducing in either gender were incredibly slim. Luckily for Minato, he married an Uzumaki, whom he loved, so his chances increased exponentially. Namikaze couldn't unlock their Sharingan. History was proof enough. Minato swore to investigate into his late wife's genealogy after the match. Rin looked on, hoping that this fight with Itachi didn't end up like the last one, both of them with broken fingers, sprained calves and slight concussions. Alright. Hand-to-hand alone fight. Begin. One thing that Naruto had inherited from his father was speed. Not just the simple ability to run fast but the ability to move so quickly he was able to make up to 5 clones of himself without using jutsu, even at his age. He called them his ghost clones since they couldn't be touched but they could touch their opponents. He predicted that when he was older, he would be able to make hundreds of ghost clones, maybe even 1,000. His ability to make speed clones wasn't something he used all the time, seeing as the stress was monumental, so he resorted to not making any clones to face his eternal rival. Itachi had been fighting Naruto for as long as he could remember, and even though he could attest to knowing most of his moves, second to only Rin, he still didn't know enough to make Naruto completely predictable. The same with Naruto to Itachi. Naruto's body flickered from where he stood and Itachi leaned to the side away from a punch to his neck and swung his leg. Naruto caught the limb with both hands but let go when the Uchiha had a kunai slip out of his sleeve to slash his hands. The red-haired speedster appeared in front of Itachi and a speedy taijutsu match ensued, so fast that every time that contacted for a counter or a defense a short burst of light flashed from that point. In truth, Itachi couldn't keep up with Naruto's raw speed, but his bloodline was working overtime to see 5 steps ahead of Naruto. His muscles were screaming at the strain of pushing his physical limits. He stepped back when he saw an opening and threw his leg straight at Naruto's stomach, air blasting from the boy's mouth on contact, but it didn't distract him long enough. He thrust his knee upwards at the leg and clipped the Uchiha Prodigy's ankle as it was hastily pulled back. Itachi winced from this and hopped away. He saw that his ankle was inflamed from the last counter. He had to keep his distance. He flashed through 3 hand seals. Shadow Shuriken technique. He threw a fist full of shuriken and muttered again. Molten Shuriken technique. He clenched his fists to control the flight of the hundreds of shuriken tied to the strings on his fingers. The red-haired boy looked at the attack whirring at him with dangerous speed and his Sharingan spun quickly in their sockets. Time slowed down as he got his legs into a ready stance. The ground cracked a little as he did so. His eyes counted 507 shuriken in total that glowed bright red with fire affinity chakra and all connected back to his opponent through many strings. He grabbed 2 kunai from his left thigh pouch and channeled water affinity chakra into them as he spun them on his fingers. Water kunai blades. Water blades shot out from the kunai and spun with the blades. The burning shuriken bounced off his sharp water defense. Shards of steel peppered around him, just outside his spinning defense, and when they stopped, he threw the blades at Itachi, closely following the weapons from behind. The Uchiha kicked the blade away with the sole of his sandal and maintained momentum of his spin, sending a hook kick at Naruto and connecting it cleanly with the boy's cheek. The Namikaze followed the motion of the painful blow and flipped to the side. He jumped to Itachi like a dart, but his body phased out of the air, like he was a mirage. Itachi knew better. There weren't many people in Konoha beneath the Chunin rank that were able to defeat Itachi in any sort of fight, but when it came to Naruto he was never able to win. He kept count of every loss and learned from them, but it never seemed to be enough. Most times he felt like Naruto was humoring him in their rivalry, as he knew Naruto could finish a spar in 2 minutes flat if he ever got tired of it. Like now. Ghost clone technique. There was a violent hum in the air, like electricity passing through a wire, and 5 Narutos materialized around him. They were blurry on the edges at first and hard to discern, but their features sharpened and became clearer, perfect copies of the original Naruto. The Uchiha's Sharingan wasn't able to find the real Naruto since they all had the same chakra signatures, seeing as they were simply all the same Naruto running around at such speeds that they were all formed. The 5 clones surrounded him and his Sharingan caught a small string that connected each of them. Experience had taught him that he couldn't cut through it. He almost lost his fingers last time he tried it. The humming in the air increased as the Narutos all took the same positions. Their legs set like they were about to leap forward and their right fists pointed at the Uchiha in the middle of their circle. The humming stopped abruptly and all the Narutos dove at him with low Chunin speed, their default speed when Naruto used his ghost clone technique. Itachi leaped high into the air and the clones phased through each other under him. 2 jumped at him to keep him inside the string circle. The black-haired boy hissed as a blow met his stomach, but a countering kick merely passed through the clone. Perspiration dripped from his head as he punched again, but this attack was slapped away easily and a clone behind him smashed a heel to the back of his head. This attack rocked him to the ground and the Uchiha landed on his hands, flipped to his feet and jumped over another clone. He attempted to form a jutsu but hissed in pain as a ghost string wafted over his left arm, burning off his sleeve and reddening his left arm. The pain distracted him enough for a clone to trip him and another to follow this action with an elbow straight to his chest right before he disappeared into red mist, leaving 4 clones. These clones surrounded the downed and very tired Itachi. The humming in the air increased as they stopped moving. One by one, the clones exploded into red mist, leaving just one Naruto to stand above him. Naruto looked down at his rival with dull eyes and placed his left foot on Itachi's neck. The contact had him hiss in pain from the heat resonating from the limb through the footwear, and aftermath of running at such speeds. Their Sharingan clashed dangerously as they cancelled each other's genjutsu in painful silence, until Itachi closed his eyes. "That's enough, Naruto," Minato declared as he tried to understand just how much power and skill Naruto was holding back, even as he didn't have the Kyuubi. Naruto walked away from his opponent to his sister, suppressing the amused snort at the sparkling stars in her eyes. "I guess your teachers were right." Naruto shrugged and sat down on the grass in a huff. He then laid down and closed his eyes. Rin giggled into her hands when she noticed that he was now snoring. Making ghost clones take a lot out of him, not just chakra. Amazing. He's just as fast as a Jounin Namikaze. Fugaku commented as he helped his son to his feet. "Go and treat your wounds, Itachi." "Yes, father. When he wakes up, tell him that both of you are ready to graduate. Leave the team assignments to me," he finished in his mind, walking off the training ground. The white-clad Namikaze twin sat down and set her brother's head on her lap, looking at his peaceful face as she ran her fingers through his blood-red hair. A small smile played on her lips as the black-clad boy entwined his fingers together over his chest. The Namikaze twins were inseparable, almost to an irritating level. She couldn't recall a day they had been more than 20 feet apart, and that was only when they were in their separate bedrooms, even though she sometimes snuck into his room to sleep in his bed with him when she had a nightmare. True to Minato's musings, they balanced each other out. She took all the happiness and he kept the darkness away from her and himself, which would have pushed most to end their lives, but her happiness leaked to him positively and his darkness leaked to her so that she wouldn't just be all about sunshine and rainbows. Their understanding of each other was incredibly deep, with them being able to hold a long secret-coded conversation around others. If they were to have a serious spar with each other, even though Naruto would win, it would take a really long time to end with them knowing each of their moves and counters to them, even to Naruto's ghost clone technique. She chose to train her senses in the silence as Naruto slept. She spread her senses around and faintly felt the few ANBU operatives that hid at the edges of the training ground. Strangely enough, even as this was an Uzumaki ability, she wasn't able to sense any of her siblings. This was why she jumped in surprise when she heard Mikoto shout from far in front of her as she ran at them. "Sister!" The adorable 5-year-old red-haired girl who was barely even up to their waist wore a yellow and white apron shirt with the sleeves stopping at her elbows and black shorts. There was a yellow backpack that was bouncing on her back and 3 bento tins balanced in her hands. She was running as fast as she could. "Sister, I brought lunch." Rin laughed quietly as she rubbed soothing circles on the sides of Naruto's head to calm him down. The 5-year-old girl sat down next to her older siblings and blushed a little when Naruto opened a single purple eye to look at her. "See? Lunch," the little girl said as she placed his lunch into his awaiting hands and gave Rin hers as well. "Thank you, Mikoto," Naruto said as he sat up. "How was class?" Rin asked as she opened her tin and started eating their lunch of rice and beef stew. Naruto watched on with tired eyes as his sisters chatted together, adding in a few words when it was expected. He was still very sleepy for using his ghost clone for that long, but that could wait. They were having lunch. Mikoto Namikaze was being home-schooled by one of Kushina's former students, Yugao Yuzuki. For the past year, and the ANBU captain's summary during this year was that Minato's genius might be genetic. Mikoto hadn't entered practical knowledge yet, but she was very receptive, and although she was a little bit too playful, she had shown that she could take things seriously when she wanted. If she kept up the way she retained knowledge, then she too would graduate early from the academy if she wanted. Right now, though, the 3 Namikaze siblings were having lunch. Oh, time skip, 8 years later. If there was ever a monumental upwards movement in the Konoha shinobi ranks, it was by the Namikaze twins. After graduating from the academy at the age of 9, they had been shortly placed in a 3-cell genin team with Hinami Aburame as the 3rd member and a generic-looking Jounin named Tomoe Fukanuka as their team sensei. This team arrangement was seen by many as simply a formality for each genin to rank up to Chunin so that they could branch out on their own, even though they still remained close after disbanding Team Tomoe. They had been subjected to the horrors of D and E rank missions for only a month before it was clear that they would be completed with speed alone through the twins or with poison beetles by Hinami. They were given retrieval, capture, reconnaissance and theft missions, even though they were still genin. These missions were cleared with a little effort, pacifying the genin long enough until they grew up and requested for harder missions. These higher missions were for higher ranked shinobi, which was when their sensei nominated them for the Chunin exams that were to be taken place in Snow Country, not even 6 months after they graduated from the academy. After becoming Chunin, the team more or less split up, with Hinami choosing to work as a hunter ninja and the twins choosing to work together as freelance Konoha ninja, which were ninja that specialized in nearly every aspect of shinobi life. They were among the youngest ever jounin at the age of 12 with the most A and B class missions among their peers. It was even commonplace for the Hokage to give them 3A rank missions at a sitting. This increased the flow of revenue to Konoha and increased their notoriety in the elemental nations. Internally, most didn't even see it as bias because it was clear that his children clearly deserved their ranks. As the years flew by, the twins ranked up to performing S-class missions, one at a time, with the occasional A, B or C class from time to time. No mission was left uncompleted and no mission was without high distinction. It came as no surprise that, just as the monikers came rolling in, the bingo book entries followed too. They were wanted on more than a half a dozen countries with S-class priority levels but with specific orders to flee on sight. Kumogakure Bingo Book. Entry No. 356. Rank, S-Team. Monikers, Kaze 2, the Red Sun, the Yellow Moon, and the Ghost Flash. Names, Namikaze Naruto and Namikaze Rin. Ages, 17 years, twins. Affiliations, Village Hidden in the Leaves, Namikaze Clan, Uchiha Clan. Bloodlines, Sharingan, Ghost Speed Release, Flash Step Release, Sensor Type, Hyper-Awareness, Chakra Construction. Family/relatives, Minato Namikaze, Father, Uzumaki Kushina, Mother/deceased, Mikoto Namikaze, Sister, Senju Tsunade, Godmother/estranged, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Godfather/deceased, the Uchiha Clan, Cousin Clan. Information. The Ghost Flash are both remarkably young jounin that have carved a path through the elemental nations as ninjas near impossible to defeat. It is believed that they are both of equal strengths and their teamwork is high S rank alone, but their individual strengths also set them apart. Namikaze Rin, the Angel of Konoha, is able to use the rare Flash Step bloodline, which is part of why she is referred to as the Sun Half. She possesses incredible strength and noteworthy physical fortitude. Take care not to enrage her. Namikaze Naruto, the Red Demon, is not readily seen, though his disposition is mostly calm and controlled. He possessed the higher form of the Flash Step Release, the Ghost Speed Release, and is able to use the Sharingan with great skill. They are credited for taking down the dreaded deity of Demon Country, destroying the village hidden in the tsunami, killing of the Iron and Steel brothers and severely wounding the lightning holder, Rai of Kumogakure. Despite this, not much is known of them or their abilities besides the obvious. It is advised that when encountered, whether together or individually, do not attempt to engage. Flee on sight. On the page left of the bingo book entry was a picture of Naruto and Rin. Rin had her back to the camera, elegantly peering over her shoulder. Her beauty so much that it shone, forming a vague halo atop her head. On her back were a pair of bright yellow wings, like that of a hummingbird, and a long tanto held out in her right hand that dripped with blood. She was in a midriff, sleeveless white shirt with the Namikaze clan symbol on the back that showed off her toned stomach just under the black mesh armor shirt and long, white ANBU pants. There were also black forearm protectors on her and a white sheath for her tanto slung on her back. She was looking directly at the person taking the camera, innocence shining through fierce purple eyes, but also a bloodlust that permeated off her very being. The blood dotting her clothes could testify to that. Her forehead protector, perched safely on her temple, glinted ominously. Naruto was behind her facing the camera, a little to the side so that the cameraman could see Rin's back, but not enough to leave her open. He was in a long-sleeved black shirt that also had the Namikaze symbol on the back, and black pants similar to his sister's. The younger twin had 4 black wings jutting from his back as well, but is angled down so that they didn't stab her, grazing the ground. He was looking down slightly, allowing his red hair to shadow his eyes as he gripped his own, drenched with blood. Around them was pure, inhuman carnage. The dead, dying or injured Kumo ninja scattered around them. It looked to be about sunset and they were fighting back to back in a deserted market village in hidden hot springs. The twins lived by a code, even though ninja didn't have codes, and this was to show their strength only a little, leaving the rest to the imagination of the opponents so that it would increase their notoriety and by extension that of Konoha's. True to this, no one wanted to prod Konoha. It had proven time without number than trying to outnumber an Uzumaki or a part Uzumaki wasn't always the best thing to do. Rin leaned back and beamed at her brother. Look here, bro, I told you our pose was cool. She shoved their bingo book picture into his face. The 17-year-old boy swiped the book out of her hand and smirked a little at the picture. It's okay, but I would have looked even better if I had my Sharingan on. He tossed the picture back at her and settled in a little more comfortably in his chair. The two were sitting in a high-class restaurant. Rin was in a sparkling red-white dress with white-heeled ninja sandals hidden under her dress. Her smooth shoulder-length blonde hair was tucked into a neat ponytail. Naruto was in a black shirt that had a suit drawn on it with black pants. It was the closest Rin could get for him to be in a suit, mission or no mission. They both wore black wigs and had on black contacts, to further show how generic they were supposed to look. They had been sent by their father on a mission to Kyumo to assassinate a human trafficking boss from Konoha who had fled to Kyumo during a raid on his headquarters. He was continuing his operations in Kyumo. The twins were to kill him without drawing attention to themselves. Naruto sipped his glass of water and scratched his cheek in boredom as he looked at their target, a well-built man in a sharp black tuxedo sitting on a plush red seat. On each arm there were two women dressed in skimpy black dresses with no other distinguishing feature, so Naruto didn't bother trying to memorize their faces. How do you think we should do this? He asked his sister. The girl hummed and lightly ran her pointer finger over the rim of her glass of water, pursing her ruby red lips in thought. How about poison? Contact poison. He added. Agreed. I'll do it. He seems to like women more than he likes men. She said playfully. Naruto rolled his eyes. Obviously, just, be careful, okay? I don't want to bail you out of trouble again. She laughed behind her hands and kicked his shin. That was one time. She then slipped on a pair of elbow-length red gloves that the back of the hands were laced with poison, smirking at her younger twin and saying, Watch this. Her eyes softened and her lips pouted a little. Her shoulders slumped down and she clasped her hands together over her budding breasts, an image of a lost girl. She stood up and sauntered seductively to the man's table, making sure to seem like she wasn't the one drawing in the eyes of nearly every customer in the restaurant with her smooth yet timid motions. She had them all hooked and they didn't even know it. Naruto shook his head a little in exasperation and leaned back in his chair so he could idly keep his eyes around the restaurant while his senses were locked onto the tiny chakra network of their target. When he noticed that the man's network was pulsating, he knew his sister had gotten there and she had his attention. He casually turned to watch what she was going to do. His eyes zeroed in on their lips to read them. Sir. She just barely said, gently playing with her fingers. The degenerate man looked over her slim figure, perfectly accentuated by her yellow and white dinner dress. His eyes stayed on her left thigh, exposed by a fashionable slit. He grinned. Well, hello there. Naruto felt his skin crawl. How can I help you? He idly pushed the two girls hanging off his arms away and patted the now vacant seat for Rin to take a seat. The girl did so gently and bashfully tried to keep away from the man as he swung his left arm over her shoulder. I was just wondering, if we could. She said it slowly, in a voice so thick with seduction that he could feel the beginnings of a boner. He leaned forward in expectation and grabbed both of her small hands in his right hand, rubbing the back of her hands with his thumb. We could. She looked down at their hands and both twins thought, bingo. She hastily removed her hands and stood up. I wanted to share this table with you but I just noticed another vacant space. You can go and call your hookers back if you want. Her entire demeanor had changed and this greatly confused the man as she walked back to Naruto. Little did Mr. Kaoru know was that weeks before today, the twins had been systematically destroying his trafficking network, burning every route he had in any country until all that was left was to cut off the head of the snake. He didn't even have a house to go back to if or when he left the restaurant. Naruto watched on as a small cough hit their target and he used that opportunity to lead both of them out of the restaurant. Mr. Kaoru wouldn't survive the night. As they were far away from the restaurant, the girl twin took off her gloves and set them on fire with a simple fire jutsu. Meanwhile Naruto sealed up the ashes in a scroll to scatter it far and wide. It was a long A-class mission, 3 months long to be precise, but they were now cleared to go back to Konoha for a break. The angel of Konoha bashfully slipped behind a tree to take off her dinner dress and replace it with her combat uniform, slipping on her jounin flak jacket and forehead protector when she was done. It wasn't that Naruto hadn't recently seen her naked, they stayed in the same apartment in the Uchiha clan compound after all and their motel room was too small for any Kinda forgettable privacy, but her faux bashfulness was to be careful if any other person saw them. Her uniform was particularly horrible when it came to stealth missions, but she made up with her speed. Naruto too climbed into a tree and changed into his Jounin combat uniform, tying his forehead protector on his left upper arm. He patiently waited for his sister to finish dressing as he allowed random thoughts to enter his mind. In Konoha, even though they could very well work and live separately, they had both been dubbed the strongest ninjas there, and pretty much all the other places they were individually a rank. Only those that weren't up to date with the bingo book challenged them. It was a non-verbal agreement between the twins that they wouldn't always fight together, they would work separately 10% of the time. The Red Demon silently dropped down beside his sister when she tied on her hide, so that they could begin their run back to Konoha. Even though it was well past midnight by the time they arrived, the first place the Ghost Flash reported was to the Hokage, their father. Naruto stood at attention while his sister chose to laxly sit down on the window sill, twirling a strand of her soft, blonde hair which was now out of the ponytail. The red-haired twin handed over the written mission report to the Hokage and said, "Mission complete, Lord Fourth." Minato looked at him with raised eyebrows, then he remembered that at the moment he wasn't their father, rather he was the Hokage. He flipped through the neatly written report and asked, "Any complications?" "None to note of." The boy answered curtly. "We were wondering why you told us to return immediately. Rin wanted to go for a little shopping." The girl snorted. "And you wanted to check out that brothel, damn horn dog." A corner of Minato's lips quirked up in amusement and he chuckled as he rubbed his forehead. He was really sleepy. "I wanted you guys back here in time for the Chunin exams," he said quickly before Naruto could retort to Rin's taunt. "That's next week. If we ran at full speed it would have taken us 3 days. Naruto pointed out and sat down on the chair in front of the desk. He leaned back and folded his sleeved arms behind his head. The twins' choice of weapons, 2 tontos, were leaning at the far corner of their father's office, near the door. I know, is it so bad that I want my kids back home?" Rin giggled and shook her head in exasperation. "Don't try the guilt card with us, Dad. You know it won't work." The mission report had ended. Now they were speaking with their father. Minato laughed and sat back on his chair. "I guess not. But I honestly just wanted you guys back home. 3 months is a long time, you know." Years of being the Hokage hadn't been too kind. The man, streaks of gray peppered in his blonde hair and light crow's feet were at the corners of his eyes. No wrinkles just yet. He had even lightened up on how he treated his children and the people who worked under him. He looked at both of his older children proudly, one who looked back at him with a small smile in his eyes and the other who looked back while she was picking her nose. He swiftly ignored that. They were now much stronger than him and he wasn't afraid to admit it. "We send messenger hawks back to you and Mikoto every week, Dad," Naruto said as he looked at the pictures on his old man's desk. Pictures of him and his 2 other siblings as babies. When the twins had graduated from the academy. One of him standing proudly in the center of the snow stadium after he had finished beating the last opponent, his sister. He initially wanted to forfeit but his twin insisted that she too wanted to truly find out who was stronger between them. She was almost as fast as he was but she couldn't make ghost clones or nearly half of the speed-oriented jutsu he could. Though physically speaking, her regeneration was higher than his and her strength was much, much higher. At that time, he was stronger than her. Now that they were jounin and at the peak of their shinobi careers at such a young age, they were both as strong as the other. If they were ever to fight without holding back, their speed alone would tear a hole in space and time, creating a black hole, Minato theorized. That fact was never proven since no one wanted to take that chance, though the twins did spar, they merely set limits. The next picture was of Mikoto, the youngest Namikaze prodigy, grinning ear to ear with her newly minted hide proudly shining around her neck. Her own combat uniform was a deep blue and black battle kimono. She had on black shorts and black knee-high socks. Strapped onto her back was also a katana, which was one of the bladed requirement if you ever wanted to be called an Uzumaki. The others were the chakra chains. The chakra levels, chakra density, regeneration, a genetically high Fuinjutsu proficiency, red hair, purple eyes, and to a much lesser extent, the fiery personality. The last picture there was of the whole Namikaze family on the day of the Kyubi festival when the twins were 12-year-olds and already jounin. It showed Mikoto dragging her older siblings to a booth as she beamed at the camera. Both twins showed various degrees of amusement at this, Rin's much more than Naruto. And Minato sent a thumb up to the camera as ate some cotton candy. Their mother's death was still a very sore spot to them, but it didn't stop them from living for her. The man shook off the memories and spoke. You guys should probably stay in Konoha these 3 months the Chunin exams are holding here. Of course we will. We want to be there when Miko wins. Rin said as she pumped her fist in the air. Naruto nodded. This whole Chunin exam is just a formality, she's got it in the bag. It couldn't be seen on his expressionless and almost even dull voice, but his purple eyes burned brightly. What do you think, father? Speaking from the Hokage's standpoint, I'm not meant to be partial and choose who to win from Konoha. He then leaned to them conspiratorially and they leaned in as well, but from the father's point of view there is no way she would lose to anyone. Rin whooped and laughed. The old Namikaze then put on his serious face and Naruto signaled for his sister to keep quiet. Rin, you're going to be keeping an eye on the 4 gates and Naruto, I want you to be with me here until the exams start. Sure. They both said as they exchanged suspicious looks. What of when the exams actually start? Naruto asked. Both of you will be my guards in the Kage's box, which will be during the 3rd part of the exams. Nothing unusual there, Naruto and Rin were his escorts if he was to ever leave the village. You two will be part of the patrol squad in the 2nd part. Enko will brief you. He allowed the sinister air to linger before he finally said. Dismissed. Boo. Next week, the Forest of Death. Mikoto Namikaze stabbed her katana down, straight through the left shoulder blade of a waterfall genin male and casually nicked the earth scroll from his hand, ignoring the downed ninja's pained screams with practiced ease. She nodded and slipped the scroll into her backpack, and turned to her teammates. Watching as Uchiha Sasuke ducked under a kunai slash and drove his fist into the attacker's stomach, then another fist followed into the gut and finally flipped forward, smashing his heel into the older genin's forehead with a resounding crack, knocking him to the ground. He looked at his female rival, his 2 Tomo Sharingan spun to a stop and without looking threw 3 shuriken at Sakura's opponent, nailing his calves and felling him. Thank you Sasuke. Sakura shouted, but the Uchiha ignored her in favor of looking at the Namikaze genin. He had the earth scroll. I think we've got enough. Mikoto said as she kicked the side of her former opponent's head, snapping it to the side with efficient brutality and knocking him out so that he would stop screaming. She easily pulled out her katana from the unconscious ninja's shoulder and smoothly sheathed it back onto her back. Yeah, let's get going. I'm getting this bad feeling. Sakura Haruno, the team's medic, said as she hugged herself. Her teal-green eyes looked around, suspicious of the goosebumps rippling up her arms. Mikoto furrowed her brow at this and looked at the sun. It was about noon and it was their 3rd day in the forest. This being because they had gotten lost on their first day there. Her eyes widened suddenly as her senses screamed, just before a giant green snake shot out of the dark forest around them and swallowed her whole before she could fully draw her lethally bladed weapon, tunneling onward in a rampage of trees and fleeing birds. Mikoto. Sakura screamed and a heavy feeling settled in as the snake disappeared back into the forest. Her legs shook under the pressure and she looked around frantically for the source. Sasuke prepared himself for an attack. Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed. A voice hissed from the patch of trees directly in front of them and a pale-faced man slinked out from the darkness. The Sannin savored the way Sakura looked 10 seconds to passing out. Sweat poured down Sasuke's face. He continued. I thought her records called her a prodigy, like those damn twins, but she was taken out as easily as any other genin. Pitiful. I was hoping for a little more entertainment. His reptilian gaze turned back from the path of collapsed trees Mikoto had been taken, to the petrified boy. Guess I'll have to settle for you, Sasuke. He drew out the Uchiha's name, licking his lips like a wolf about to feast. Who the hell are you? Sasuke yelled as he struggled to stay on his feet. What do you want? It's a shame you haven't heard of me. The Sannin gathered himself, taller enough to eclipse Sasuke's hope for escape. I am Orochimaru of the Sannin. He began slowly walking towards them, and with each step the thick, palpable killer intent increased. To think you children can withstand this much. Sakura's eyes rolled to the back of her head and she passed out, tipping back like a falling tree. Orochimaru chortled. I stand corrected. He hissed, continuing. I have come to make a proposition to you, Sasuke. He was about 3 feet away from Sasuke, the boy was panting under the invisible strain to his body. Everything in him screamed for him to run away, but he couldn't move. You want to be stronger than Makoto, rest her poor soul. I can help you with that. We can help each other. How? The boy stammered, going in and out of consciousness. Take my gift, the rest is up to you. He hissed and his fangs grew longer, his neck stretched to Sasuke and the boy still couldn't move. Before he could bite down on his neck an explosion shook the ground, throwing off his concentration and making him reel his neck back. The silence that fell around them was foreboding. The Sannin made sure to spread out his killer intent even more. Then Makoto walked out of the darkness of the forest, her katana soaking blood and the ends of her sleeves shredded beyond repair, though still somehow immaculately clean. Her blue eyes hardened as she looked at her team, Sakura lying on the ground in a dead faint and Sasuke barely even able to turn his eyes to look at her. She then looked back at the Sannin that had caused this and grit her teeth in a feral growl, her shoulder-length red hair frizzing out uncontrollably. She got into the first stage of her Uzumaki Kenjutsu stance, her legs in a ready position and both of her hands squeezing her katana handle as she held it to her right side vertically. Orochimaru looked at her in amusement, making sure to show her how much beneath him she was. She lives. The snake blood that was on the katana gently dripped on her hands. Leave now, or else. Or else what? He taunted, licking his lips in anticipation, feeling the tendrils of killer intent pushing back against his own. I will kill you. You can try, child. Give me all you've got. He didn't want to know why his killer intent wasn't affecting her. He might as well humor her in a short fight. Let's pray you're as good as those twins. We'll see. She said quietly and bent her legs a bit before she lunged forward and her body turned into a partly visible blur. Not even close to how fast her brother and sister were, but Mid-Chunin was still considerably fast. Orochimaru slithered to the side as a katana materialized and intended to slice off his arm. His palm struck the weapon as it came down, but the girl used the momentum of the blow to send a spinning heel kick that was in turn blocked by the older man's forearm. She slashed upwards with her weapon and twirled the weapon once on her hand once before she stabbed it into the ground and leaped over it, her hands still holding the weapon, forcing the man cross his arms to block the bare-faced dropkick to his face. She kept cycling kicks at him until she was about to drop on the ground. She rolled away from the axe kick and twirled her weapon again, holding it in a reverse grip. Orochimaru had a kunai slip out of his right sleeve into his hand. The girl ran at him full tilt and the fight continued. The speed and intensity of the fight increased with every strike. The man's grin stretched wider with each smooth motion of her attacks until he finally grew bored of her focus on his neck, spinning in a circle and tripping the girl. For a quarter of a second, Makoto was suspended in the air by the leg sweep, shocked defenseless. Orochimaru's right leg shot up, driving a heel into her chest and evidently ending the fight in her with a hard, painful exhale of air. The man looked down at the tired girl and was about to slip a knife behind her ear, just to spite her father, but his kunai was violently knocked out of his hand, courtesy of another kunai. He looked in the direction the weapon was thrown from and briefly scowled at the Naruto, who was sitting on a branch, and Rin, who was sitting at the base of the tree. The female twin sent him a finger-wiggling wave and the boy gave him a small frown. I think that's enough, Snake Sannin. So, you finally came. Took longer than I expected. The man bit out a sneer. A second late and you would have lost your sister. Oh no, make no mistake, old man, we've been here since the beginning. We just wanted to see how she would do against you. The female blonde speedster said lightly. The snake summoner wondered how they were able to hide from his senses. Naruto then added. Plus, it would have been nice if you were clearer on why you were here, you know. His sister nodded in agreement. The red-haired teen dropped off the branch and as his feet touched the ground a short, quick hum resonated from his body outwards like a bubble of air, cancelling out the older man's killer intent. Orochimaru scowled deeper at this but kept his eyes fixed on the twins. The boy looked over his shoulder at his twin sister and she nodded, walking up to the old Sannin, wearing a fearless stare. She grabbed her downed sister and her teammates, weightlessly slinging them over her shoulder and hefting them back to the tree. She eased the genin down. Naruto stayed silent as this happened, his eyes on the Sannin. He mumbled. That katana doesn't feel like it's for you, right Makoto? The girl nodded timidly. I think a long sword suits you more. Or a broad sword. Rin piped up as she ran her hands over her sister to check for any wounds. She wasn't a medic by any stretch of the imagination, but she was using her chakra senses to scan her body for any openings or abrasions. Or a claymore. Naruto said, crossing his arms and refusing to let Orochimaru out of his sight. Agreed. What do you think, Mikoto? Does a claymore sound better for you? She commanded Sasuke to sit down when he stubbornly made for a kunai, feeling his courage return after Naruto cancelled the effects of the Sanin's killer intent. Yeah, I think that one has better reach. My katana is more for elegance, I'm looking for power. Mikoto muttered as she painfully sat up. We'll go shopping after the exams. Naruto said flippantly. For now, we have other problems. The sadistic Sannin did not intend to fight either of them at the same time. The last time he did, he was forced to retreat, armless, on one leg, heavily concussed, with a broken nose and a missing eye. His ego burned like the sun. Ambushing them together was probably his worst idea ever. He gasped in shock as there was a short, violent electrical hum directly in front of him before a hand reached forward from the humming haze and harshly grabbed his neck. The rest of Naruto's body materialized along with his arm. The Naruto that stood guard in front of his siblings exploded into red mist. The snake Sannin clenched his eyes shut, instinctively knowing that the teen had his Sharingan activated. We warned you, Snake Sannin, do not come after anyone we know. That includes our family. He squeezed his fists, tightening the man's throat and lifted him off the ground a little. The man clawed at the hand holding his neck, struggling with his might before he abruptly stopped and smirked at Naruto. I'll be seeing you soon, boy. And his whole body shriveled up and dried. Naruto dropped the snake skin clone, eyes blank and his Sharingan blinked off. He left the moment we made him aware of our presence. Damn pervert. Rin whispered. She turned to the members of Team 7 and said. You guys should probably head to the tower. Hi, big sis. And don't drop your guard, that old snake might return at any time. Naruto supplied, pushing his hands into his pockets but not facing them. He was busily scanning the forest for the Sanin's chakra, contemplating releasing his summons to give chase. Though Naruto shook the idea out of his head, that was overkill. Hi, big bro, the girl saluted. Rin looked a little indecisively, sending Naruto a pleading look, and when he shrugged with a chuckle, she dove at her baby sister, hugging her with all her might. Sis, can't breathe. Don't you ever make us worry like that, you hear? She released her and looked over her again worryingly. Mikoto nodded and Rin smiled softly. It was Naruto that spoke what was on her mind. Know when to retreat, kid. Don't let your emotions control your actions, and don't come off as predictable, your attacks were too obvious. He appeared in front of her and ruffled her hair, his eyes crinkling to show that he was trying to smile. You did good. Thank you, big bro, big sis. I promise, I'll make you guys proud. She puffed out her chest and her cheeks in a strong pose, which crumbled when her big sister bopped her nose playfully. We know you will, just don't get hurt too badly along the way. The air hummed, like a swarm of mad bees were flying about 20 feet away before Naruto exploded into red mist and Rin burst into a shower of yellow lights. So cool. Watching her siblings use their signature body flicker techniques was always interesting. Naruto used a mixture of the standard body flicker but added in his own ghost speed release, which for some reason resulted in leaving an afterimage of him standing for a full minute until it crumbled into soft red mist. It was good for misdirecting opponents. Rin utilized what she called her flashy flicker, which incorporated her bloodline ability, the flash step release. The flash step release was a watered-down version of Naruto's ghost speed, which was significantly higher than High Jounin speed. This speed though left a short trail of afterimages in her wake. This would have made it predictable, but she was faster than predictable. The afterimages left behind stayed for half a second before bursting into yellow flashes of light, creating an illusion of popping lights appearing and disappearing every quarter of a mile. She negated this effect in her flashy flicker by mixing her bloodline with the standard body flicker, so that instead of a trail of after images following after her every speedy movement, it took every after image that was to be made from her starting point to the end all in one, and these formed small flashes of light, perfectly hiding her movements until it was too late. Shisui Uchiha would be proud. The only known problem with the twins' bloodline speed was that a vibration occurred split seconds before they moved, directly from their bodies to the air. The volume depended on the distance and the seriousness of the movement. They negated it by moving 50 feet with each run before making another body flicker. Mikoto wasn't as fast as them, ever for a Namikaze, who were the sole clan that had the flash step and ghost speed release bloodline, but she was faster than her peers. The problem with fully unlocking her speedy potential was the super dense chakra that was weighing her down, her thick bone and muscle density and, surprising enough, the fragility of her skin if she ever moved that fast, even if she unlocked the flash step release. A normal person's skin would burn up at the speeds Rin ran at, and a person's organs would explode out of their bodies at Naruto's speed. Since for lesser experienced people, running that fast was like swimming at the very bottom of the ocean through a very thin tube. The amount of squeezing pressure on their bodies was monumental. They would explode like grapes in a microwave. Minato Namikaze was able to easily use the flash step release, since he had unlocked it when he was much younger, and he incorporated his flying thunder god jutsu to make him faster. The twins declined learning that jutsu since they too knew that moving even faster than they usually do would jeopardize a lot of things. They also declined learning another of their father's signature jutsu, Rasengan. The fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, sighed tiredly after his twin children finished their report on what happened. Do you at least have a guess why he was there? He sent a snake to swallow Mikoto and ignored Sakura, so I can only guess he was after Sasuke. Rin surmised, perching her head in a thinking pose, seated on a chair across from her father's desk. The old Namikaze hummed in thought. Do you think it's like when he attacked both of you in Hidden Smoke? It was a mission they took 2 years after they became full jounin, to go and assist the smoke leader round up the mutated pests that were cutting through his shinobi force. The cause of the mutated creatures was obvious, but attracting the ghost flash was a bonus for the Sannin. He had originally wanted to take any of their bodies, preferably Naruto's, but had to retreat with his tail between his legs because he found out what truly happened, and a powerful Namikaze procreated with an equally powerful Uzumaki. The results were 2 speed demons with massive depths of chakra. I believe so. He kept of spouting that he wanted our bodies. The only thing that comes to mind on why he wants our bodies cements him as a perv. Rin huffed with her arms crossed tightly. The fact remains that Orochimaru has now revealed himself. That makes him a threat. Minato said as he propped his elbows on the desk and his head on his fists. He looked at the 2 jounin in the office. You want us to hunt him down? Naruto proposed. No, that will distract you too if any other person attacks Konoha. Save it till after the exams. I'll assign Kakashi and Yugao. Understood. The twins saluted and marched out of their father's office. They left the tower and paused outside. Rin looked at Naruto expectantly. He looked back at her and she caught a message flashing in his eyes. The corners of her lips lifted up and she laughed loudly. He pursed his own lips to suppress his own laugh, but he did pat her shoulder as they parted ways, one mission in mind. Find and kill Orochimaru of the Sannin. Neither of them liked leaving a mission or even a murder unfinished, so if they killed Orochimaru then their mission to Smoke was completed, even though the fat Smoke leader insisted that the mission was completed. So now that they had parted ways it increased their chances of finding him if they actively put in an effort, but that wasn't what Naruto had communicated to his twin. Merely look around passively and to not allow the snake summoner to escape again. Naruto would search first while Rin would cover for him. The first thing Naruto did was to head back to the Forest of Death and activate his Sharingan to find the Sannin's chakra trail. The man's putrid, reptilian chakra trail was purplish in color and was slowly being overpowered by the nature chakra in the Forest of Death. The experienced hunter stayed on the trail and frowned sharply when it ended at the west exit of the forest. He looked around, his Sharingan eyes spinning lazily, and he pulsed his chakra quickly. The air hummed and a visible ripple of sound expanded out of his body. The bubble disappeared 10 feet away from him and he knelt down on the ground when he felt what his senses told him. A single strand of silver-gray hair. There weren't that many silver-gray-haired people in Konoha or even outside of Konoha, since the trait needed to have this color hair was for the holder to be exposed to undue stress from an early age, or that the person's descendants were exposed to this stress. The 17-year-old jounin examined the strand, but his jujitsu couldn't tell him anything other than the obvious, male and moisturized. The boy grunted and pulsed his chakra one more time before he stored the short strand of silver hair into a sealing scroll, to be further examined after he looked through the Konoha migration log for any possible suspect. The first name he cancelled out was Kakashi Hatake, since he and his sister were with him when the killer intent reached them in the tower. Spreading out his killer intent through the forest wasn't really the smartest thing Orochimaru had done. The buzzing air of vibrations Naruto expelled from his body were a sort of physical manifestation of his sensory ability. It acted as more accurate feelers for anything in the air that was bigger than a molecule. This meant that he had to train himself to discern between the grass and the strand of hair he caught. It was incredibly hard to use, so he only used it during dire situations. He called it his hypersenses or hyper-awareness, and apparently now Kumo knew about it. He shook off the thought as his body burst into red mist, which fell on the grass and disappeared. Orochimaru revealing himself could not be taken lightly, and it wasn't that Minato took the Sannin lightly. Rather, he just wanted to ensure the defense of Konoha if or when an attack happened, instead of launching a full-scale search for the snake summoner. Unknown to any of them, all the way in aim and deep in the bowls of the Namikaze, a red-haired man looked on as his followers prepared themselves to capture the first-tailed beast, and probably the hardest to ever reach. He wasn't going with them, but since Sasori of the Red Sands, the Mad Bomber, Daidara, the Zombie Brothers, Haiden and Kakuzu, the Zero-Tailed Beast, Kisame, the Orange-Masked Uchiha, Tobi, the Angel of Aim, Konan, and finally the last member of the Akatsuki, paired with Kisame, who went by the name Ringo Kamatachi of Sunigakure. This person wore a sand camo turban around his head and shoulders, making his silver eyes glow eerily from within, while his red and black clouded cloak covered his torso. When it came to fighting the Ghost Flash, there was never a safe way to go about it, and even though their spy in their organization, Zetsu, had ensured that the Namikaze family were going for a week-long vacation out of Fire Country after the Chunin exams, it was possibly the most vulnerable they were able to get Mikoto Namikaze in a very long time. All the members of the Akatsuki were to fight and defeat the individually S-rank twins, their S-rank father, and capture their quickly maturing sibling. Nagato would simply follow along to observe, since he wasn't ready to make himself known yet. Each member of the rogue organization had 3 months to gather and prepare for the encounter. Collecting tailed beasts would start after they had gotten the 9 tails, which was going to be the very last beast they would tear out of its Jinchuriki. If all else failed and the Namikaze family decided to remain in Konoha, then they would just have to attack them there. They were ready for that. Eliminating their prime threat was very important. Naruto Namikaze, the Red Demon, was the fastest ninja on the planet and was also their biggest threat. He was to be killed immediately. What hope did the speedster family hope when 8S rank missing ninja came after Mikoto? Chapter 2. Tracing a family's history could be incredibly hard, especially when you're from a clan. This was strange because every clan kept a well-organized record of their bloodline, whether or not the members married outside or not. It continued on till present. This was hard because one had to sift through generations and generations of families, irrespective of whether or not the record had been restored. Quite frankly, it was boring. The plus side was that at least it was all there, no one was excluded from the record. This case was same with the Namikaze clan, which was the 6th oldest clan in history. The first being the Otsutsuki clan, then the Uchiha, Senju and Uzumaki clans, then the Hyuga clan, and finally the Namikaze. The Namikaze clan was an offshoot of the Uchiha clan, specifically from the second-born son of Indra Otsutsuki, who could never truly activate his Sharingan. He was cast out of his clan for this defect at the age of 15 by Indra. This Namikaze descendant's name had been too obscure for generations, so he was simply referred to as Papa because he was the first. And even though he couldn't use the Sharingan, he had been blessed by his father with other things before he was kicked out so that he would be able to survive the outside world. Papa rejected his Uchiha name and called himself Namikaze, because the place he had been dropped off on was on a cliff, a combination of wind and water in its purest form. Papa Namikaze had a large well of Yin chakra to compensate for not having his former clan's Jujutsu. This lightened his bones and muscles exponentially, making him fleetfoot, almost to a supernatural level. He trained this speed, honed it to a lethal sharpness, meanwhile working for years as a mercenary. The Namikaze forefather possessed a popular trait among Namikaze men: he was very active beneath the sheets, so it shouldn't come off as a surprise that dozens of women came to him in droves, claiming that they were pregnant for him. This was possible because, naturally, people born in the Sage's era were extremely fertile. He was, quite frankly, the most virile Namikaze in history and the very first one to possess the flash step release his clan had patented. He accepted these women, their children, whether they were truly his or not, and any extended family that wished to join his growing family. Many texts wrote that Papa Namikaze yearned for familial acceptance and love, and when he received this from his harem and his new extended family, his flash step release elevated to ghost speed release. It was difficult discerning truth from fiction when it came to texts written in the Sage's era. The reality might be that Papa Namikaze trained and learnt harder and better, each and every day, in order to better protect his large family. This was more believable than saying the Namikaze forefather evolved his bloodline due to the power of love. Thus, the Namikaze clan was formed, and so it spread. Papa Namikaze broke apart and reassembled the Uchiha fighting style to better suit his bloodline speed, agility, and the vulnerabilities while running. He named this fighting stance the Hummingbird Taijutsu, making it a clan taijutsu style. It was a fighting style that made use of the raw speed to overcome opponents rather than brute force. When the old man had discovered that he and his clan mates were good at separating and combining their chakra affinities, especially towards water and wind affinity chakra, he, along with his children, joined hands with the Uzumaki clan and paved the way for the perfection of jutsu like wind release, great breakthrough and water release, water wall encampment, among others. The old clan was initially a nomadic clan, traveling around the elemental nations with no particular home to call their own, mercenaries for the highest payer, and herding cattle and goats to make a living seeing. They later chose to settle down in the same place Konoha was to be founded after Papa Namikaze had reunited with his older Uchiha brother, his Senju and Hyuga cousins. The Uzumaki forefather that the Sage of Six Paths had personally trained alongside his sons, who had been blessed with his longevity, chakra capacity and chakra density, had long since moved to a secluded island he had created from incredibly powerful jutsu and started his own family. He called this island the country hidden in the whirlpool. They were still on good, familiar terms with him despite the distance. Each clan agreed to set aside their differences and ally with each other mutually to better survive the chaotic world they were in, supported by their surrogate brother, the first Uzumaki. It was 600 years after Papa Namikaze's progenitor's death, and there were over 10,000 Namikaze men and women did they finally call the Uchiha Senju Hyuga Namikaze settlement Hidden Leaf, formerly called Leaf, named after the leaves of the forest their home was surrounded by. They called the treaty between the original clans the Memorandum of Understanding of the First Four. To give legitimacy and recognition for their hidden village, the founding clans carved out a large chunk of the surrounding area and installed a daimyo to govern the new lands, ensuring the new head of state and his appointed head of government formally agreed to allocate and defend Konoha its independence. This period of forming Fire Country was a bloody era, filled with war and death, whereupon the founding clans claimed lands and battled those that resisted. Arguably, this was the very beginnings of the feud between Konoha and Iwa, as several acres of Iwa territory had been sliced off and annexed for Fire Country. Till this day, fighting for those pieces of land had not been resolved, only downplayed. The first Hokage was chosen by a collective decision from the four original clan heads, with the exception of the Uchiha clan head. The decision was respected for years until Madara Uchiha defected. Before the position of Hokage came about, the four origin clans formed a council of clan heads to govern Konoha. More clans joined Konoha, namely, Aburame, Nara, Yamanaka, Akimichi, Hatake, Inazuka, Kurama and Shimura clans, fortifying Konoha even more. The Namikaze clan was a legendary clan that chose to stay away from the formal leadership of Konoha out of respect for the two more dominant clans, the Uchiha and Senju clans, so they preferred the position of Konoha's traders since history has ingrained years of nomadic lifestyle into the heads. The other option would have to become mercenaries, but they couldn't for obvious reasons. Despite their silence and humility, they were never to be underestimated or prodded, and it always seemed that each clan head was stronger than the last. The clan was a family-centric clan, taking a page from Papa Namikaze. They never rejected a clan mate if he or she wasn't able to unlock his or her bloodline ability. And so far this had helped them for many generations. There had been no quickly resolvable internal feuds and their clan compound was frequently used to settle matters between other clans, origin clans or not. It was when the fertility rate gradually began reducing did it raise alarms throughout the clan. Every method to correct this was unsuccessful, giving them no other option than to let nature take its course. The once mighty Namikaze eventually half died off until Minato's father, the former clan head, died, in battle against a battalion of hidden darkness ninjas, leaving him to fend for himself at the age of 5 with hundreds of years of jutsu only the Namikaze could use. It was only providence that the woman he fell in love with, Uzumaki Kushina, was from a clan of high fertility rate, which negated his own low sperm count and passed it on to his children. This meant that the Namikaze clan might have a chance of returning. Minato had been able to trace his family's history straight back to Papa Namikaze, and he found why his son was able to use the Sharingan. His grandfather many times over had married outside the clan and the child married outside again. the person they had married was an Uchiha who married outside again. This outside marriage went on 3 more times, watering down the Namikaze and Uchiha bloodline until another child married into the Uchiha clan. This child wasn't able to use the Sharingan, so she married a Namikaze, the child married a Namikaze, then another married an Uchiha. Finally, the outside marriages ended when the Uchiha Namikaze offspring married back into the Speedster clan until 3 more generations later Minato was born. He assumed that it could only take a monumental amount of fear and devastation that made Naruto unlock his Jujutsu. Naruto loved his mother like Rin loved her father, so it shouldn't come off as strange that watching her die sped up his Sharingan's activation. Or at least that's what he thought. The blonde Namikaze Hokage didn't know that Naruto had unlocked his Sharingan when he was 4 years old after he had witnessed his father use the Flying Thunder God Seal to destroy the battalions of IWA ninjas that attempted to infiltrate Konoha. A feat that contributed in making his notoriety and also a feat that cemented his place as an S-rank, flea on sight ninja. Naruto snuck away from his caretaker and his sister to watch his father fight. The sheer speed and brutality of it unlocked his Sharingan and evolved Flash Step release his Ghost Speed release, right before he passed out from sensory overload. Only his sister and Itachi knew of his Jujutsu because, despite having a wicked rivalry with the Uchiha, they were also very good friends. The red-haired boy was a known prodigy, albeit a playful one, like his sister, so evolving his eyes to 3 Tomo took a year to accomplish. Watching his mother die had unlocked the second highest form of the Sharingan, Mangekyo Sharingan. Minato suspected that his son had those eyes already, but he would have to ask him to show him at his own time. His eyes might also be why he was already an A rank at 17, but if he used that line of thought, why was Rin also an A rank? The blond man sat back on his chair and propped his feet on his desk. His receptionist had gone home and he was waiting for his children to have the usual evening discussion as they go home. It was 9 in the evening and he suspected that Naruto was at the tower in the Forest of Death while Rin was in the hospital. He allowed the dim lighting and the darkness to take his mind away until they arrived. Oh. With Naruto, the Red Demon walked silently through the emptying halls of the tower. Tomorrow was the beginning of the 3rd part of the exams and everyone was getting as much sleep as possible. Not for him though, since he was part of the patrol group for the tower and the Forest of Death. His fiery purple eyes looked around the dimly lit corridor as he walked past each room. He gently, slowly cracked each door open to check if the occupants were sleeping, nodding to see that they were. Until he stopped at the door his sister's team were assigned to. His face remained blank, albeit with a small upward twitch of his lips, when he opened the door a little and saw his sister snoring and drooling on her bed. The pink-haired girl in Mikoto's team snorted, shifting restlessly on her bed and then went back to sleep. Naruto finally looked at the last member of the team and raised an eyebrow when he noticed that he was doing quiet push-ups. He opened the door a little more, there not being enough light in the hallway to change the lighting in the room by much, allowing him to quietly observe the Uchiha for 10 minutes before he walked into the room with practiced, silent motions. The Uchiha stopped abruptly and turned his head to the older Sharingan user. "Can't sleep?" Naruto asked as he crossed his arms. "Not like you care." Naruto snorted, rolling his eyes. "You're Itachi's brother." "Of course, I care." "Well, whatever. What do you want?" the boy said as he continued his push-ups. "I was wondering why you can't sleep, especially when you guys have such an important day tomorrow." Naruto looked around the dim room at where the team had stashed their equipment and weapons. "Don't you have a point to prove?" "A point?" "Yes, a point." "Don't you have one?" "I don't know what you mean." Sasuke asked with a huff. He kept powering through the push-ups until Naruto kicked his stomach with the flat of his foot, lifting him into the air and having gravity deposit him on his bed in a huff. "What the hell was that for?" Naruto shook his head and placed a finger on his lips for silence when he saw Sakura flinch in her bed. He trusted his sister to sleep like a log even if there was a hurricane and she was in a boat on the sea. He continued and the pink-haired girl began softly snoring again. "Did you know that sleep deprivation is the #1 cause of death in a shinobi?" The boy remained defiant for half a minute, staring straight into Naruto's blank purple eyes until he sighed and shook his head. "I thought so." "Okay. But, why do you care? And don't say it's because I'm Itachi's brother." Naruto tipped his head to the side and replied. "When I was younger, about your age, I wanted to be just like Kakashi, believe it or not." Sasuke actually scoffed out a small laugh. "Yeah, right. You. Like Kakashi-sensei? That weirdo? Naruto smiled a little, or tried to. It's true. He was my role model. I spent 22 hours and 30 minutes training every single day of the week ever since I was 4 to be exactly like him. I even started dressing like him at one point. Mask, gloves, porn and everything. A small, amused smile spread on his face when Sasuke turned wide-eyed at this. It's true. You can ask Rin. Then what happened? You're obviously not like Kakashi-sensei. When I turned Chunin, I was training well past midnight and I passed out from exhaustion. He took me to the hospital and when I woke up, he told me one thing. He told me be myself. He did. I would have thought Sensei would love to have an admirer for once. Naruto smiled at that, continuing. For some time, I was heartbroken but then he told me that if I really wanted to be like him, I had to make my own path. I didn't even know that he had been my guardian since the day of the Kyuubi attack. What's the point of your story then? Don't be like me, it's not worth it. He said and some underlying sadness lurked in his eyes as they drooped almost minutely before he looked back at the young Sharingan user. A memory of his dead mother smiling sunnily at him flashed through his mind quickly. Then another memory. Kushina heaved, a gaping hole in her chest and her mouth choked with blood. In her husband's arms, her head turned to her son, hidden far from sight and horror-struck and paralyzed as his mother paled. Silent rivers of tears ran down from his eyes. The Tonto he brought with him to help in the fight laid useless on the earth. Kushina winked. He shook away the memory and hoped the boy didn't notice. Sasuke didn't. The young Uchiha leaned back in surprise. Fumbled for control. And who told you I want to be like you? Itachi told me. Besides, with the way you go around brooding, combining the Uchiha and Namikaze combat styles, and how you try to run faster than your level is evidence enough. The red-haired teen smirked at how flustered the Uchiha got. I don't know what you're talking about. Naruto ruffled his hair. Don't worry kid, your secret's safe with me, and my sister, and Itachi, and your parents, and my father, and the whole Uchiha clan. He leaned back in. Shock, realization hit him. Wow. You are terrible at keeping things secret, pretty much everyone and their moms know. He laughed a little and closed his eyes, a small grin spread on his face. His hand was still on the boy's head as Sasuke crossed his arms in frustration. Whatever. Naruto turned to leave. Get some sleep kid, tomorrow's a big day. He waved over his shoulder and closed the door. The Uchiha boy sighed and went to sleep, he might as well listen to his hero. He vowed to impress Naruto enough in the Chunin exams to take him up as his protege. The redhead went to the top of the tower to watch the stars. The red-haired Namikaze later finished up his rounds through the tower while his sister followed up on the lead he found in the forest, the silver-gray strand of hair. She was scanning through Konoha's migration logs as the hair was being secretly analyzed in a confidential Konoha crime lab to see if it was associated with any silver-gray-haired man in their computer database, being done by a former academy classmate they trusted, a lab technician that transferred out of the academy in their second year to enroll in the civilian academy. The ninja life wasn't for everyone. Thankfully, the twins stayed friends with the lab technician. Before we pan over to the blonde twin and watch her own half of the investigation, our red-haired hero's eyes caught something moving quickly in the forest. He raised an eyebrow slowly and narrowed his eyes to see better, since there was no full moon to give any light. He caught the slight glint of glasses. He stood upright and looked back at the door he went through before his body disintegrated into red mist. The world moved in slow motion after this. The real Naruto leaped over the railing of the building's top floor and had his feet touch down on the side so he could run down the wall in a blur. The buzz that came from this was so low it could be chalked up to the crickets chirping in the forest around the tower. The fastest ninja alive appeared directly above his target on a sturdy tree, and made sure that his massive well of chakra was well suppressed. He squinted at the person and caught silver-gray hair as he passed under him. The speedster crawled after this bespectacled man through the tree, as silent as one of his many monikers, the red ghost of Konoha. He bent down on a branch and his purple eyes glowed in the night, behind the person he was stalking, creating an ominous image if he was seen. The person stopped outside the Forest of Death, on the west exit, and Naruto quickly summarized that this was the person that Orochimaru had met before his trail went cold. He began musing on whether or not to capture him but held back to see what was going to happen. He didn't particularly remember the name of this genin, if he even was a genin, so he merely watched as the person stopped and another person dropped into the clearing. Naruto's sharp eyes caught the glint of the hidden sound forehead protector. What was so important that I had to come personally? Do you know how hard it is to sneak out of that place? Kabuto whispered fumingly. Yeah, you're just scared that the red demon would get you. The person chuckled and made playfully haunting sounds until Kabuto shushed him hastily. Shut up, idiot. What do you want? The darkness around them prevented Naruto from seeing a clear description of them besides the fact that his first target had silver hair, and that the newcomer was a very bulky man. The teen squinted at them and refrained from activating his jujitsu. The chakra burst would attract their attention. Lord Otokage wants you to participate in the exams for as long as you can. Did he tell you why? Naruto got comfortable on the branch, sitting on it with his legs crossed and his hands set on his knees. He's really interested in that Uchiha and the Yandame's kid. You're one of the only people he trusts that's competent enough to bring out their potential. Who is the main target now? Sasuke or Mikoto? Both? Sasuke. But you know how Master is, he has his own plans for the Namikaze kid. The person paused and continued. Hell if I know and hell if I care why he wants her so much. I'm just a messenger. Kabuto screwed his lips to the side in irritation. He could easily beat both Sasuke and Mikoto, but if Orochimaru wanted to see him do it then so be it. Alright, I'm heading back. Unless you've got anything else to say. He began hurriedly walking back to the tower while the other person too turned around and started going back to where he came from. At that moment Naruto made a decision. When Kabuto was more than 20 feet away from the messenger, and the hunter still had his eyes on the sound ninja, Naruto fell back off the branch and landed softly on his feet, sliding into the full shade of the bushes when the messenger turned around sharply. The man shrugged and kept on walking. That was when Naruto's left arm appeared from a haze of low buzzing directly behind the man's neck, wrapped around the person's neck, and his right poked a cluster of nerves on his neck, knocking the sound messenger before he even knew it. The rest of the speedster's body materialized with his arms and he hefted the person on his shoulder just before he and the person crumpled into a pile of red mist, scattered by the cool evening wind. Oh. The next day, the Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves sat down with his fellow village leaders in their booth after he had announced that the third part of the exams will begin. The aging Namikaze puffed out a sigh of relief and ignored the amused laugh Rin tittered out. It's not as easy as it looks, you know. He muttered. He could rally troops for war and lead the charge, but in peacetimes like these, it felt out of place to encourage children to fight as hard as they could. No, it certainly is not. The Kazekage of the village hidden in the sand, Raza of the gold sand, grunted sourly and idly watched as the twins left the booth to stand outside, guarding the entrance. Kaminasuke, the leader of the village hidden in the marshes, also watched on. You have a very accomplished family, Lord Hokage. The blonde man smiled at her and nodded his thanks as he tried to steer the conversation away from him and his family. Thank you. I hear your nephew is attending this exam for his first time. The woman beamed and lilted in her seat. Yes, he is. He was so excited I could barely calm him down. You are the sensei of their team, isn't that a little controversial? Yumi Cho, the leader of the village hidden in the chill, piped in. Not in the least. I don't give them preferential treatment or hand everything to them that I wouldn't give any other ninja. Kamina retorted across Minato. The fast man chuckled nervously as the chill leader bared her teeth at the other woman. Now, let's calm down. I trained the twins before and after they became ninjas until they became chunin. They suffered and enjoyed as much as any other ninja in Konoha. Matter of fact, I'm training my son to be my successor if anything ever happens to me. I'm sure he deserves such a high calling. Yumi said with a wistful sigh as she looked at the Hokage. What would you be doing after you retire, Lord Hokage? I've always wanted to open a store, I don't know which one, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. He obliviously overlooked the way the chill leader batted her eyelashes at him, winking at her. What will you be doing? I guess I'll just be moving between Chill and Konoha. I like the warmth of this village. It's very inviting. We would gladly welcome you, Lady Yumi. That's enough flattery for today. We have an exam to watch. Kamina said with a deep frown, before she sent an accomplished grin at Yumi and winked at the Hokage. Minato furrowed his eyebrows in confusion, then he shrugged and watched as the second match started. The waterfall leader, Shibuki, laughed to himself at the legendary obliviousness of the Leaf's Hokage. Outside the booth, Naruto idly watched on as his twin sister juggled 6 shuriken. Each village leader was at liberty to bring along at most 2 designated bodyguards for the exams, and these guards were seated on wooden seats outside the door of the booth, watching the peculiar Namikaze juggle sharp spinning stars. "I can do that," one of the marsh bodyguards said and threw 6 shuriken in the air. He immediately regretted it as he fumbled with his hands and closed his eyes, ready for impact any second, but 3 seconds later he opened his eyes and saw that Naruto had each shuriken between his fingers and thumb. "It's an illusion," he simply said. True to his words, the shuriken that the blonde speedster was juggling disappeared in numerous puffs of smoke which quickly cleared to show that she had indeed been juggling red balls. Rin caught the balls in her hands and grinned at the flustered waterfall guard. The redhead allowed the guard to feel shame as he handed him his flying stars back. One of the sand guards sighed wistfully and leaned sideways on Naruto, her shoulder touching his. The teen looked at her with a raised eyebrow and let his eyes travel over her body. She was in brown khaki pants and a short-sleeved black vest with her brown Suna Jounin flak jacket over it. There was also a long camo scarf draped over her shoulders and neck numerous times and trailed down to her brown boots. She had blonde hair and tan skin with teal-green eyes that didn't hide her intentions for the boy. His eyes moved from her to the TV monitor hanging over the guards in front of him showing a live feed of the exams. "So, how does it feel being the child of a Kage?" she purred, and her comrade rolled his eyes in exasperation as he leaned on the wall behind him. A mundane, pointless question to every ear that heard it. "It's great actually," Rin quickly answered before Naruto could. She shared a rage-filled glare at the Suna woman. "It's really awesome," she grit, her teeth bared under her closed lips. "I won't say it's awesome, but you know, I don't have any complaints." Naruto shrugged and looked at both of the girls. One was leaning heavily on his shoulder and the other was trying to drag him away. "Is there a problem?" "No. Not at all," the Suna guard rumbled. "Dude, she's just horny," her Suna comrade said, amused yet uncaring of Naruto's predicament. "Bulmy," the kunoichi screeched. "What?" "I'm just being honest," the man said and held up his hands defensively. "Didn't you say you wanted to see if he could live up to his reputation?" "My reputation?" Naruto said in confusion. The other guards perked up at this and listened in. What reputation? He didn't want to come off as cocky, but he needed to be a bit more specific about the reputation. "Yeah. In Suna, we call it Lord Red Demon Week. Lord Kazekage even enacted a state of emergency when it happened." He nodded. "Not a whole lot of people know it, mostly the ladies. I'm guessing the guys that know don't want to talk about it. Except him, apparently." Small droplets of sweat began forming on the Namikaze's temple. Why did he enact a state of emergency? The Suna guard named Bumi kept quiet, but it was the flirtatious woman that sighed in frustration and started the story. "Legend has it was that 8 months ago, when you were on mission to my village, you were meant to spend a day there. A friend of mine said that you walked into a brothel with 3 boxes of condoms, paid in full for a whole week for the entire building and made rounds on each and every escort there. 3 times. Silence reigned over them as the guards, men and women, looked at Naruto with admittedly more respect. The redhead tried to keep his face blank, but he couldn't suppress the cold sweat that dripped down his red face. He tried to focus on his younger sister's fight, which was being screened on the monitor. The ninja continued her story. Even the matron tagged in, making 28 women. After your first round, more than half of the escorts had passed out and the noise had attracted a few kunoichi who were patrolling at that time. When they found out, they invited their friends and these friends invited theirs and so on, and so on. The storyteller pouted, crossing her arms. I was outside the village on a mission, that's why I couldn't come, but friends of mine sent me letters telling all about it. Her grumbling deepened, sour at the loss. Naruto gulped and avoided the shocked look in his sister's eyes. I knew you were a horn dog, but I didn't know you could get this horny, she muttered in shock. Well, don't leave us in suspense. Why did the Kazekage enact a state of emergency? A female guard from Chill asked insistently. Every single or unfaithful kunoichi that wasn't on a mission heard about what was going on and went to that brothel that same night, and Red Demon did them twice before he moved on. He even used shadow clones. My friend said it was the most satisfied she had ever been in her life and probably the last time she ever will, unless he comes over again. We even have a teeny tiny, small club about you. Definitely not a cult. She laughed dismissively, causing more than a few sweat drops and face palms. It's a fan club, I swear. Bumi shrugged, not sure if he should be bothered or not that a leaf ninja had spent the week decimating the female population of Suna's ninja force, right under the nose of every guy. That week, the guys didn't hear the screams because we sealed off the building. You haven't told us why there was a state of emergency. The chill girl exclaimed, abruptly covering her mouth with her hands to contain her excitement. I'm sorry. This is just too good. I know, right? Her partner, a male, added with a deep laugh. Well, Lord Red Demon here did them all so many times and so damn hard that they weren't able to walk for 3 whole days. Lord Kazekage thought it was an epidemic. She allowed a laugh to erupt from her lips and the other guards followed. Naruto even laughed nervously but stopped when his twin punched his arm. No one was able to make any coherent words or think straight during that time, so he only found out about what really happened a week later. One of the reasons I came here was to see if I can get some red demon dick. She looked at Naruto and waggled her eyebrows. Naruto was inclined to smirk, if not for the death jabs being driven into his side. Can I assume you are also in his cult, fan club? The same chill girl asked mockingly. I'm the Assistant Secretary General. The woman said proudly, with her campaigning and the kind of votes she got, she would have been vice president. Only that she hadn't been blessed by Lord Red Demon. The guards laughed loudly when Naruto ducked his head in shame. I took some chakra replenishing pills, the ones Akimichi use when they're really low. I guess it worked too well and I went a little stir crazy. I vowed to myself that that would be the last time I did that sort of thing. Oh no, you don't. When you come to Suna, splurge all you want, keep your vow outside my village. The legend of Lord Red Demon Week was strong in Suna. Alright, back off hot stuff. Rin barked so suddenly the guards jolted in surprise. Leave my brother alone, he doesn't need any of your craziness. And what if I don't? I will have Lord Red Demon, over and over and over again. The woman said with a nasty smirk. You can't have him all to yourself, you know, even you aren't that strong. You know what? Rin abruptly stood up, her face turning an unpleasantly deep shade of red. Naruto just barely held her back, bright yellow lights crackled off her skin and popping as they fell to the ground. He lifted his twin onto his shoulder and quickly walked to a corner, away from their prying eyes. Let go of me, damn it. From that point, the guards couldn't clearly hear what they were saying. It started with incoherent yelling, then a thump on the wall they assumed was a punch, or a body bouncing off the wall after a punch. Then quick conversation that bordered on gibberish, before silence that delved into soft crying. A long, deathly quiet followed, ending with a long sigh and low, mumbling conversation no one could clearly grasp. There was a distinct, airy moan that came then, before it ended in a longing groan, then finally a secretive laugh and a small giggle after. Before the more feminine laugh shushed the masculine teasing hurriedly and both twins walked back to where the guards were assembled. Rin was smoothing out her flak jacket with her sweaty palms, her cheeks blazing red and her blonde hair, formerly set in a neat ponytail, was now messy. Naruto's blank face showed no clue on what they were doing outside their field of vision, but his eyes sparkled with a peculiar achievement. They silently watched the twins. Naruto had whipped out a book and was reading it and Rin was shakily tidying up her hair into the ponytail, her eyes looking anywhere but at them. The blonde twin broke the silence, subdued and shy. So, does anyone know any games? The door to the Kage's booth burst open suddenly and each guard stood at attention as their respective Kage nodded for them to follow. Neither twin knew that this much time had passed. Minato looked between the trussed-up appearance of his daughter, her cheeks blazing red and using her palms to cover them, and Naruto had a half-lidded, lazy look in his eye as well as his usual lazy backwards lean, something he still kept during his Kakashi craze phase. Their father noticed that his usually messy hair was a little bit scruffier with barely visible hand trails, their tantos were sheathed and in their grasp. They didn't know that he had her weapon and she had his, but Minato noticed. No Namikaze spoke for an extended while as the pair's father scrutinized them critically with his eyes, until Naruto's eyes widened suddenly. How did Mikoto do? The man allowed him to veer his attention away from them, just that once, as he walked ahead. The twins stalked at his sides. She's going to fight next month against the Kazekage's son, the one you helped correct his seal. Rin asked. The very same. Is he stable? Naruto questioned. More or less. He doesn't really speak during his fight, so I won't know. They exited the building, choosing to walk through the forest of death to the village rather than follow the well-lit underground tunnel. It was more relaxing. When the last part of the exams come around, the guards are permitted to stay with us in the booth. There's enough space for all of us. The twins nodded and Minato continued, partly paying attention when Naruto glared darkly into the dark recesses of the forest, anticipating a giant tiger about to leap on them. The animal whimpered and slinked back from them. What has Ibiki said about our sound friend? Rin answered her father's question. He said that the guy must have a really high pain tolerance, both psychological and physical, so he couldn't squeeze much out of him besides what Naruto told you. The blonde father furrowed his eyebrows in suspicion and motioned for the girl to keep talking. Ibiki asked for his name and the reason why the Otokage wanted Sasuke and Mikoto, but he didn't say anything, even after he told him that he knew that Orochimaru is the Otokage. He was just really surprised, but except for that, nothing. Did Ibiki set Enko on him? Yup. The blonde girl nodded. Still nothing. She thinks she's losing her touch. She sniggered behind her hand and kicked a small rock out of her way. The rock hit the forehead of a gorilla, knocking it out instantly. I advised him to allow Inoichi to look at the sound ninja. Naruto added, holding his sheathed tanto by the leather strap, allowing the sheath to drag on the ground, creating a thin line as he walked. He was much more successful than the other two, understandably. The Hokage prodded his two most trusted ninja, who doubled up as his oldest children. They were among the few shinobi he allowed knowledge of S-class secrets since they had proved time without number that they were indeed loyal to Konoha. The other few were Yugao, Tenzo, Shikaku, Kakashi, Jiraiya and Tsunade. Plus, they were a rank shinobi. It would take a large amount of effort to capture them too and torture the secrets out of them. The written report is in your office in the A-class cabinet. Minato interrupted the boy. Why a class? Turns out that Orochimaru still wants to kill you, so he theorizes that killing Mikoto first would break you. The legendary ninja laughed darkly. If he kills her, I will kill him. He should know that by now. He does, but the snake summoner is crazy and unpredictable. The messenger doesn't know all that much why he wants Sasuke. Naruto continued. Let's assume it's because of his Sharingan. So, no invasion just yet then. The older Namikaze mused. The redhead looked at his sister shortly and continued. I honestly think that if he does try an invasion it would end before it really starts. There are many high-ranked ninja allied to Konoha in attendance. The spectating chill, marsh, sand and waterfall ninjas were the first people that popped into the older man's mind. The rest included Kakashi, Asuma, Guy, Kurenai, the guards, and many more people. It would be a really stupid move on his part if he invades. Not only would we know where his base is but we will, of course, retaliate. Rin finished. But like Naruto said, he's crazy and unpredictable. She raised a suggestion to her father. Do you want us to call Jiraiya Pervisage back or maybe look for old lady Tsunade? Minato and Rin caught the quick twitch on Naruto's jaw at the mention of the slug Sannin's name. He didn't say anything though. Jiraiya is investigating something in Demon Country for me, and Tsunade is still nowhere to be found. Shizune keeps us updated about her but she's hesitant to tell us their travel plans. She says it's as far as she wants to go behind Tsunade's back. He half frowned, musing aloud to his children. We have more than enough ninjas to defend Konoha if anything happens. They nodded in agreement and exited the forest. They were immediately greeted by 5 ANBU ninjas, the Hokage's guards for when the twins were too occupied. I want you two to focus on our barriers and the migration logs. At about midday, take a walk around to the clan compounds. Hopefully they won't mind too much. Make sure you help around. I'll see both of you tonight. The look in his eyes made them know that he had a reason for them doing this. Hi, Lord Hokage. They said curtly, giving their father slight bows. The old Namikaze spared them a smile and walked off into the town as his guards followed, stalking in the secrecy of his surroundings. The Yondaime placed a lot of trust on his oldest children, an amount of trust people would consider unadvisable, but he wasn't a lot of people. They were his greatest pride and he always felt like they were still trying to prove something to him. Namikaze Mikoto had big shoes to fill, considering just who her father was and her older siblings. She was born with a chip on her shoulder and bore the full weight of expectation. The twins and their father had to repeatedly remind the young girl that she was already considerably strong for her age. She didn't need to go over and beyond to show them she was a progressively capable kunoichi. The 12-year-old genin wanted to use the Chunin exams to show them that she could reach their notoriety. Winning it was just an added bonus. Her biggest challenges would probably be the Kazekage's son, Sabaka no Gara, the youngest child of the Uchiha clan head, Sasuke Uchiha, who also had a chip on his shoulder, and the mysterious medic ninja, Kabuto Yakushi. Gaara's match was among the shortest since he immediately crushed his chill opponent into unconsciousness. Fortunately, he wouldn't die from his wounds, but he will be out of commission for a while. He was a silent specter, much like her older brother, and this made her wary of him whenever they passed by each other in the arena. However, she refused to show any fear. Sasuke's match wasn't too long either. He had used shuriken connected to strings and fire jutsu to scorch a path through Kenkuro's puppet collection. Sasuke was Mikoto's longest rival, as she and the boy had met when Naruto dropped her off at the Uchiha compound with her namesake, Auntie Mikoto Uchiha, for the day while he went to run a quick house errand with Itachi for the Uchiha clan head's wife. Rin had left for a solo mission a week prior. She and Sasuke were just 3 then, but the amount of loathing they had for each other was staggering, even to the Uchiha matriarch. So much so that the simple matter of passing a glass of water to the other would take 5 minutes because they preferred glaring at each other. This was mainly because Naruto and Itachi were rivals. Their childish logic summarized that they too should be rivals. Their spars in the academy were so serious that Iruka preferred not to let them fight each other. The times they did fight, Mikoto always won. Then lastly was the sound medic, Kabuto. The bespectacled man always gave her the creeps with the way he smiled at her randomly. He was pitted against a marsh genin and he used 30 minutes to play with her, making it painfully obvious that he was not just a normal genin. She promised herself that she would put him down, no matter what it takes. The way he smiled at her made her feel like he was undermining her. That infuriated her like nothing else. Punch after punch, kick after kick, the youngest Namikaze offspring never relented in her assault of a seal-enhanced training dummy, jammed on a wooden pole in her family's training ground. Her katana had been discarded in the living room of the house and her blue-black apron shirt was off to reveal the form-fitting black wife-beater underneath, matching her tight black shorts and her black knee-high socks. She glared at the smiling dummy, hating it more and more as it continued rising back up after each blow. She spun on her heel and the kick connected to the side of the dummy's head, continuing in the turn to drive her elbow through the inanimate object's ribs. It fell back with the pole holding it up but slowly rose back up again, its drawn shit-eating grin making her feel like it was looking down on her. She yelled and was about to drive her clawed fingers through its head, her intention to tear it to pieces, before a hand grabbed her shoulder. She quickly turned around and the knee she sent to the person's stomach was effortlessly slapped back down. Mikoto pulled her deflected leg back and thrust her palm forward. The person leaned to the side, away from the hand and simply tripped the red-haired girl. As she tried to struggle to her feet and regain the air that had been driven out of her lungs, a foot was placed on her stomach, holding her down. The girl growled at the person and squinted her eyes up, trying to see past the sharp beams of sunlight until her eyes focused on the person's face. Mikoto slowly relaxed and closed her eyes when she saw that it was her older sister, Namikaze Rin, who looked down on her with a concerned frown. The blonde speedster gently removed her foot and helped her sister up when she noticed that she had calmed down. Mikoto opened her eyes and realized that Naruto was standing behind her twin. Rin dusted the younger girl's back for grass and grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look into her eyes. Purple and blue met then as the purple orbs searched the blue stare for any clue on what was wrong. She then found what she was looking for. "Your fight was epic, Miko." The blonde girl beamed. The younger girl's lips twitched upwards but she hurriedly suppressed it as she crossed her arms. "How would you know that? You weren't even there." "We're really sorry that, Mikoto, we were Dad's guards and we had to stay with the others." Rin replied apologetically. "But we did watch your match from there. I can't be any prouder." She brought the distraught girl into a strong hug, her arms remained limp around her older sister. "Oh yeah? Then who did I fight?" "Tatsumaki Kyurigin of Suna." Naruto answered. "We even downloaded your fight into our computer." He grinned when her cheeks reddened. Rin cooed and hugged her even tighter, this time Mikoto slowly circled her arms around her sister. The fight had been spectacular. Tatsumaki was a short sword user with high proficiency in using her weapon. The fight admittedly pushed Mikoto close to her limits. It ended when the Namikaze used brute strength to break her opponent's weapon, following up with a kick to the midsection and a ninkenjutsu move her mother's clan created called the ninkenjutsu, wind release, yami sickle and scythe. The jutsu started with her stabbing her weapon into the ground violently, creating cracks that followed after her opponent's airborne body. A wall of transparent wind sickles rose from the ground and held her in place while Mikoto went through a long chain of hand seals. With each hand seal short-handed wind scythes materialized and nailed Tatsumaki all over her body, all except her head and her heart. The bloodied girl called for a forfeit before Mikoto could begin another chain of hand seals. The only reason the jutsu wasn't a rank instead of B rank was because it could easily be broken out of if the victim channeled even a drop of fire affinity chakra. That is, if the victim is able to see through the haze of blood and pain to do so. Sadly for Tatsumaki, she didn't know how to channel fire chakra, only wind. The red-haired girl had accompanied her opponent to the infirmary. Naruto looked at the sun and said, "You should take a few days to rest. I'm sure you're tired." He raised his hand when the girl was about to object. "I know you much better than I know my own chakra." She wanted to complain about that but a pointed look from him kept her quiet. "I promise we'll go shopping for a claymore tomorrow. And I'll come too," Rin said as she released the little girl from the hug. "It'll be our own Namikaze day out." "Thank you, big bro, big sis. Don't sweat it," the older redhead replied. "And Dad said that we're going to be with him in his booth for the next part of the exams, so no throwing any more tantrums, okay?" He smirked in amusement as she mumbled her reply. "Okay, good. Now, go watch some TV or something." He glanced up toward the sun again and continued. "I think Captain Yoruchi and the Island of Dreams is on. I'm 12, damn it. That show's for kids." The female twin shared a knowing look with her brother and they looked back at the girls silently. Mikoto put her foot down. "I'm not 5, damn it. You still wear your Captain Yoruchi pajamas and you still have her poster up in your room." Rin teased. "Yeah, but only 'cause I keep forgetting to take it down." Sure. If you insist." Naruto muttered and watched as the girl stomped down the training field and into the house, idly picking up her discarded apron shirt on the way and slinging it over her right shoulder. She sent the twins a defiant raspberry as she finally entered the house. Not even 5 seconds later the catchy tunes of the children's show blared loud and the 12-year-old Jenin slurred curses as she hurriedly tried to reduce the volume, swiftly ignoring the loud cackles of her older sister. "She's just too cute," Naruto said with a shake of his head. It was funny how he was Sasuke's role model and Itachi was Mikoto's role model, the older Uchiha brother never let him live it down, and vice versa. The A-rank twins then took their time as they walked to each entrance and exit gate together. At each gate they asked for the migration logs and looked for any suspicious characters. It was possibly the most tedious and boring job they ever did, given that dozens of people moved in and out of Konoha on a daily basis. The log books were each a foot thick. It might have been the Chunin gatekeepers' jobs to thoroughly look through any person's ID and personality, but it was now apparently their duty to double-check. It was nearly pointless. After checking the logs of the 4 gates and finding nothing of note, the twins proceeded to the clan district, which was the biggest, widest and oldest district in all of Konoha. The first clan in the district they visited was the Nara clan, since it was the closest to the entrance to the district. The reason being that it would be too troublesome if they had to walk far before they left the district. Naruto had to help round up some deer that had escaped their enclosure and Rin gossiped away with the Nara wives. The Yamanaka didn't really need that much help, rather the male members of the clan kept throwing blatant suggestions at Rin, which flew right over her head. Naruto's dark presence kept them away. The Akimichi clan were like their mind-walker friends, the female clan members flirted with the oblivious redhead, with him chalking it up as them being overly friendly with him. They stuffed his pockets with cookies and they serenaded him with poetic cooking recipes. That didn't stop Rin from barking at them to back off, which they did when they the veiled venom of Rin's threats. The Hyuga clan head had asked Rin to spar with their older students to show them how much harder the real-world ninjas were compared to their instructors as well as, possibly give them a goal to surpass, while Naruto was asked to help a branch clan instructor with his class by adding in helpful, theoretical advice when it was asked. The fact that he was one of the most well-versed hunter ninjas that was still alive in Konoha as well as his very ominous presence cast a looming shadow over the class, subduing the students in fear-induced paralysis, which wasn't his intention but it was what the branch member instructor had asked him to do. Apparently, the branch member students were among the rowdiest recorded. The Kurama main branch family had been murdered by the dead clan head's own daughter in a demonic fit of rage. So only branch family were spared before Yakumo was contained by the village's ANBU. The twins helped the 9-year-old orphan do some chores around the house and keep her company. Naruto checked and reinforced her 9th circle demon containment seal and Rin helped bring the girl's spirits up. It would take years of continued effort but she was prepared to see it to the end. The girl barely allowed them to leave, though after getting reassurance from the red-haired twin that they would be back she let them leave. Kakashi, the last known Hatake, had moved out of his clan compound for personal reasons, so they didn't need to visit his clan compound. The Shimura clan had been reduced to a single, old and senile man named Danzo, who served as one of the Hokage's advisors. Every time he saw them, he would always give them an unnerving stare and spoke like he was at the end of a tunnel, in a very hollow, empty voice. They helped the old man with maintaining his empty clan house and quickly moved to the last clan compound, situated in a cluster of trees and away from the other clan compounds. Naruto's hand reached forward and he firmly shook the hand of the Aburame clan head, Shibi Aburame. They had been let into the compound and led to the clan head's house, seeing as it was a tradition to greet the owner of the house before a visitor was at liberty to move around. This was a tradition the twins respected since they were also from a clan and that they wouldn't be happy to see a stranger walking around their clan compound, even though it was presently deserted since they had all moved to the Uchiha clan compound. Naruto could hear a low buzz from the stoic clan head, nodding respectfully before they unclasped their hands. The red-haired Namikaze looked over his shoulder and saw his wife, Yum Aburame, also sending her a nod. The woman exchanged nods with her sister, who stood beside him and followed her brother in shaking the clan head's offered hand. Your father said we were to expect you too, Naruto, Rin. Shibi droned as he started walking back into the compound with Naruto at his side and his wife and Naruto's twin, following from behind. We want to use your visit as an opportunity to study how a non-Aburame would handle a dangerous hive. You want to place a hive in us? Rin said skeptically, dreading the answer but sighed when the man shook his head. No. We want to see how, with your combined exposure to vast insects and flora, we'll tame a nest that has been giving us trouble. They walked through the compound and most Aburame clan members stopped what they were doing to watch them walk toward their hive breeding chamber. Without looking the man noticed Naruto's attention. Do not worry, we are just not too accustomed to having visitors. I wonder why. Rin muttered but ducked her head when Naruto glared at her over his shoulder. I'm sorry. There is no need for apologies. It is the reason why our ancestors moved here. The Silent Clan feared rejection almost as much as they feared a hive rebellion. It was why they actively strived against confrontation among allies. It was best not to hear and see the rejection than feel it. So, about that hive? Naruto asked. The 3 ninjas and 1 housewife ended up in a medium-sized building that was made completely out of steel. The roof was flat and the walls were thick. From what Naruto could see, there weren't any holes big enough for a bug to crawl through. The twins were among the short list of people that the Yondaime allowed knowledge of the intricate ways Konoha ran. This included how each clan operated. This knowledge was heavily guarded by each clan member but they were entitled to share this with the village leader, as cited in Konoha's founding charter, amended to include this clause when the title of Hokage was created and occupied by Hashirama Senju. These clans' secrets were recorded and stored with these various clans, rather than with the Hokage, who wasn't made aware of their location. In case they were ever stolen the blame would be on the clan and not the Hokage. The clans were allowed to keep their clan-based secrets and personal secrets confidential, but when it came to secrets that affected the way the village ran, like with why the almost extinct Hatake clan always wore half-masks over the lower half of their faces or why the Kurama clan even had the demon in the first place, or even why the dying Shimura clan were able to use wind affinity chakra to the extent that it could be classified as a clan-based ability. These seemingly small things greatly affected the village. This was why Shibi, who was well aware of who the Hokage wanted to know these secrets to, didn't hesitate before he began explaining exactly what he wanted from the twins as they stopped directly in front of the door. Naruto, do you remember when you were 15 and you personally sought me out here? The clan head asked and the teen nodded. You pleaded for me to teach you all I know about praying mantis. Evidently, there were different aburame containment houses for different kinds of hives. The one they were in was unarguably the strangest in history. There was a single blood-red female praying mantis female sitting frozen in the center of the room with hundreds of tiny mantises marching around her. The red queen of the praying mantis was about 2 inches in height, and the reason they assumed she was the queen, despite the obvious fact that there were hundreds of her kind walking protectively around her, was the golden leaf-like crest on her head. This crest shone in the low-lit containment area. When you agreed to give us a single queen from your summons, we studied it and discovered that it was able to multiply itself limitedly, that is, only 10 subdivisions before it stops, then clones would multiply for only 10 more generation. The queen and the first 2 generation of queen clones would self-fertilize and lay eggs, and the remaining clones take care of these eggs. Although there is a distinct difference between offspring from the queen and offspring from the clones, they chemically appoint themselves needed positions in the nest, having some sort of knowledge when there is a saturation in a particular position. Did you know this? Naruto furrowed his eyebrows and shook his head. Outside of his summon's internal hierarchy, their power, and their blood chakra demands, Naruto didn't think much about the reproductive habits of his summons. Who would have though his gold leaf praying mantis summons self-fertilized their own eggs, making sure there were just enough soldiers and queen clones? Not too many, not too few. They had refused any other person near them. I wanted to see if you could calm them down. Do you plan on putting them into a child? Naruto asked quietly as he carefully rolled up his black sleeves to show the summoning seals that were beautifully tattooed to his arms, warping hypnotically up to his elbows and reaching his shoulders. Honestly, I have some of my people looking into finding suitable candidates. The mantis are extraordinarily careful on who they allow in their nest, so much so that the last person to sign their contract was eaten alive by his own summons when he took one of their own without proper permission. Unlike what I did. He silently motioned for the people to step back. But before I attempt what I'm about to attempt, I want to make you aware of the consequences. Like what? The bug user clan head asked blankly. This nest is an extension of my summons, which, since I was 15, is an extension of me. If I convince this nest that you people aren't a threat, then you should know that if they are placed in a suitable host, then that host would be an extension of me, as this hive would soon have my chakra. Through blood, bone and chakra, Naruto's gold leaf praying mantis summons were as part of him as his own heart. Leveraging this deep connection, Naruto was saying that if he acquired permission from the praying mantis empress, the infallible sovereign of her praying mantis children, her sub-queens birthed from the empress and set prominently among her children, the armies those sub-queens commanded, and this mantis queen outside of the summoning realm, the queen mantis of the Aburame clan would be yet another extension of the red demon. Understood? The mantis are a rare summons that have been known to fight devastatingly. I honestly wish for it to be fully assimilated into the clan. Will you be willing to teach the host? The dark man droned. I'm not sure what I will teach the person that you wouldn't be able. He said this over his shoulder as he walked unafraid to the swarming nest and stopped 3 inches away. The queen slowly looked at him and he could feel the condescending air she used in that single motion. He looked at the tiny insect and leveled his palms at the female mantis. The seals on his seals glowed an ominous red, and the soldiers around the woman prepared to jump in the way of the imminent attack if it ever came. They fluttered their wings threateningly, their united noise sounded like a violent vehicle revving up its engine. The teen remained stone-faced as the red glow finally covered his palm, spinning into a whirlpool to meet at the very center before a short burst of smoke later and a tiny white seed shot from his palm. Passing through the frantic defense, the mantis were assembling and impacted directly in front of the utterly unimpressed female mantis. The female looked down at the seed and poked it with a claw as Naruto's palm smoked to a stop and the red glow of his seal went back up his arm, blinking off. The mantis queen vibrated and a single soldier marched forward. The male soldier examined the seed more closely, even using its hooked claws to hold it up and turn it over as its beady eyes looked over it. It chirped and handed the seed to the queen with a deep bow. The queen took it and promptly ignored the soldier as it scampered back to the hastily formed defense as one of the flyers. The queen looked at Naruto curiously and noticed that, despite the loud buzzing in the hundreds of mantis that were on his body, he stayed calm. His heartbeat didn't waver with fear, despite the claws the mantis had on his neck, ready to sever the arteries of his neck at a moment's notice if he made any wrong moves. The red-haired Namikaze was a statue, knowing that if he even breathed a little deeper his life would be cut short. The queen, ever so slowly, gnawed into the chakra seed, before it outrightly swallowed whole. The regal female used her claws to scratch the ground once and the mantises on his body leaped off him, but hovered around him. She made a short motion with her other claw and Naruto spoke. They are good people, I swear in the name of your empress. He wasn't in any way beneath his summons, rather they had established a mutual respect for each other. He rarely if ever swore with his matriarchal summons leader's name, but this was a possible move that would make Konoha stronger. The queen seemed to snort in amusement at what he said, but Naruto held up his right forearm to her, showing the symbol the empress herself had engraved there before the summoning seal fully came about. 2 claw slashes going down vertically and a horizontal line near the very bottom. The mark was the only part of the black and white summoning seal tattoo that remained red. Recognizing her empress's mark with a visible flinch, the queen raised both of her claws in the air, commanding her soldiers to stand down as she nodded to Naruto. The soldiers each bowed a little to him and resumed their circular march around their queen. Naruto turned to his silent audience and smirked. Well, I guess we now have a mantis nest in Konoha. He and his sister silently left the clan compound, after biting the clan head and his wife goodbye. An odd curiosity on the hierarchical structure of his summoning contract stayed at the forefront of his mind. Later, he would speak to one of the Empress's sub-queens. There were 20 sub-queens mantis in the summoning realm and more than a dozen mantis sub-commanders under these sub-queens, who were charged to command thousands of mantises at a time in specific fields like hunting, stealth, frontline combat, support, among many others. At the very top of the summoning clan was the Empress, who was much smaller than her giant, ideal summon-sized sub-queens and sub-commanders, standing about 5 inches tall. Sub-queens were identified with the same golden leaf symbol that was on the folded wings of the Aburame's queen. The Empress, on the other hand, was a delicate creature made colored entirely in fine gold and silver. The gold leaf praying mantis were strictly hierarchical and had so far survived by this chain of command. How he had even found the summoning scroll was a story for another time. The duo left the cluster of trees that surrounded the secluded Bug clan and walked away from the clan district. Naruto, who had stronger sensory abilities than his sister, slowed down a little so his sister wouldn't notice, and looked up at the top of a residential building situated in the upper-class district leading towards the Hokage's tower, and looked at Gaara. The one-tails holder was sitting cross-legged on the edge of the building with his massive sand gourd strapped to his back. The other redhead didn't seem fazed that Naruto had caught sight of him. Rin obliviously kept on chatting away as Naruto stopped to stare down the boy his father had helped fix his beast containment seal. The sand user, for close to the first time in his life, didn't detect the usual fear others had for him in the A-rank Namikaze. Matter of fact, he suspected that the older redhead had sensed him the very moment he started stalking them, starting from when they left the clan district. The sand user had his arms crossed as he wondered if it was a popular trait for Namikaze to not fear, like when Mikoto had shoulder-checked him as they left the arena. It took him a monumental amount of effort to not instinctively crush her with his sand. Minato had saved him from the crazy screaming in his head, but the damage had more or less been done. It was only out of respect buried under layers of fear did he not kill the genin Namikaze. Make no mistake, he wasn't afraid of them. He was just curious about how a clan of speedster lacked the patented fear others, even strangers, held for him. The Kazekage's son could only stare in open shock at the back of his red-haired opponent as she walked away. Her brother had even choked on the air he was breathing at how relaxed she was, even after watching exactly what he could do in a fight. It was that sort of disrespect that intrigued the solemnly quiet boy. Intrigued and enraged him. He abruptly glared harshly at the lax red head and disappeared in a sand body flicker. That's it for part 1. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.